Okay, so we've got another Shift Talk podcast. This time we're talking with Gordon Patterson. He's the director of talent at LKQ, and we're so excited to talk with him. We've had a little bit of pre-conversation. We've gotten to know him. You're going to love the stories and experience he has to share. So just strap in, get ready for all kinds of sports analogies, and we're going to have an awesome conversation.
Because when I came in 3 years ago, in the system that we use, kind of talking about people, process, technology, like the technology we had was so behind because we tried to focus on our frontline employees. And so it made a huge gap between like your corporate and your exempt employees versus your non-exempt employees, because the turnover has been so high, because we're talking about distribution, we're talking about individuals that are working out in the yards, we're talking about dismantlers. We also have to have legal professionals and tax professionals. And so what we did was we really looked at our application as well as our attraction strategy to try to find the power of our third-party marketing firm, how we attract to this group, but we still give them the same candidate experience and get what we need from a compliance standpoint. So it was a really unique, it was an interesting challenge coming here for.
It's really interesting because Todd and I have been on a flurry of client calls lately, and it's so interesting when somebody cites what they think their turnover number is, especially in that frontline, entry level, floor level position. And they always kind of fall back to the number that you see nationally. And that includes everybody who's also exempt and salaried. And we're like, when you see those numbers, and even they're scary at 110, 150%, we're like, the real number, if you sit down, do your turnover number just for your entry level hourly roles, it's going to be like 400 to 600% without a doubt. Because we've done the numbers. That's why we're like, we've done the analysis at multiple sites, and we're like, we don't typically throw that number out because most people just don't believe it. They're like, there's no way it's that high. I'm like,
Or they think like, how can I turn this ship around? Because I mean, that like, it just feels like a massive overhaul. So
Holly, and that's a fantastic book too, Turn the Ship Around. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it is one of my favorites. We kind of coined a saying here at LKQ and talent acquisition was like, calm waters don't make for great sailors, right? And we really started to look at our turnover number, at least, from my 3 years here. I have a great partnership with our field senior director of HR. And then we take that number and we do it site by site, and then we do it up through region, and then the national number for North America. And then we look at our cost per hire too. And we try to do a true analysis there to really break down what is the issue. And I think the biggest change, I know this one of the questions that we had was, how do we have to think differently in this current workforce environment, in this ecosystem now? And I don't think it's hard skills. I think it's truly soft skills. I think it's all about the culture that you have, that you're able to authentically show day by day. I talk to so many TA professionals. I talk to Shauna, my TA manager, Shauna Dexter. And one thing we talk about is like, how do each site, how do they have their subculture, but it's wrapped up in the LKQ culture, right? And I think about that because I've lived so many places, right? Like in Arizona, when I lived in Phoenix, Arizona, you can have a barbecue in February, right? Because it's still, it's great weather, right? You can have a site Super Bowl party outside and grill burgers and hot dogs but living.
We're not doing that in Charlotte.
Right.
or Michigan.
Or Michigan, for sure.
You're like, no way we're standing outside and having burgers and hot dogs. If anything, we need to have some chili and some hot chocolate or something.
In a parka.
Right. So it's really come down, I think, to how leadership can adapt and create a culture and find these common themes amongst their employees, the ones that have been there for a while, and capture that and take a little old and a little new, right? Because I think that I use sports analogies all the time. When you look at most championship teams, you got to have a couple OGs in there that's gone through the rigors of the season when it gets long, like baseball in the middle of the summer, that really can help people keep going. And if you have leaders that know how to empower, challenge, talk to, are relatable, I think that now your employee population is going to have a much greater satisfaction level, because it's not do as I say anymore. It's hey, let's get in the mud together, let's get in the weeds together, and let's win together.
So it kind of goes back to what you said about soft skills, especially for your leadership, as well as, your frontline and your entry level too.
Absolutely. If there was anything that COVID did great, was the work-life integration, right? Like that.
Right? Like this is normal.
That's the connectivity.
What you got to do.
That cuts down that social distance among people to find similarities. And we use that through our homes during COVID.
Yeah. No, I still remember that one interview. That guy was on TV and he freaks out because his son walked in. And I just, I cringe so hard because I'm like, why'd you react like that? Like,
Yeah.
bring him into the interview. Like, you know, my son walks in all the time when I'm in calls and I'm like, oh, hey, Lincoln, come say hi to everybody. Like,
Yeah.
we all have lives outside of this.
Absolutely.
But when it comes to like industry and culture, like that was not normal for
Right.
broadcast.
Yeah.
So it's just like, this is like really, I'd be freaking out too, because that's just not the norm. But yeah, I mean, things have definitely shifted since COVID.
Right.
Speaking of culture and
I don't want this
people
to turn into like a big, you know, this may be a hodgepodge, but I almost think about it now. Like, I don't know if I would want to work for a company that if my son or daughter or if my friend or somebody walked in, that they would freak out, because then that makes me feel like it would be such a tight culture, right? Like if they're like, oh, you know, I get it, you're at home and you may have told somebody, but they may need something out of that room or something. I think that's the awesome part now about it's totally changed from the company needs people from the people needing the company, right? Because you see so many entrepreneurs, you see so many people that have made the decision to either work for themselves or to be very, very intentional and choosy around who they speak to because of the culture.
Yeah, so that's what I want to do is back up a minute and ask, like, so when you got to LKQ, like, what were some of the challenges? What were some of the things that you just decided, okay, we're going to turn this ship around?
Yeah.
That's what I want to dig into. Is like, let's dive into that.
So I'll start here out of it. You know, I was incredibly grateful for this job at LKQ. So this is my first director job, and I was able to hear about the job. I saw it online, but my former leader at Republic Services, Genevieve Dombrowski, she was the SVP of HR here. And I had been trying to crack that director ceiling for probably about 2 or 3 years.
I can relate.
And I was just like, you know, I had mentors. I felt like I had sponsors, and I'll talk a little bit about that because that's a lot.
Super important.
I prayed for the job. Everything, you name it. I was thinking about it constantly. I was reading director job titles to try to find gaps in my own game so that I can work through that in preparation. And when I got the opportunity, I was extremely excited. But my personality type is you don't really get excited until you make an impact, right? And so I think, you know, when you move companies, you know, you're moving industry, you're moving yourself geographically, you're moving to a team of people that they don't know who the heck you are, right? They look at your LinkedIn, of course, and they're like, what is this guy all about? So coming in, the good thing was Genevieve gave me a little bit of sauce as to, you know, kind of what the deal was. And talent acquisition was still very young at LKQ, about 5 or 6 years old. She talked to me a lot about, we were doing a lot of the more basic recruiting. And I don't say that disrespectful. I say that as we were posting, we were sourcing, and we were trying to fill recs. And I said, well, that sounds boring, right? That's not cool. And so, you know, she really talked a lot about, Gordon, you've been able to see a talent acquisition function at Republic Services go from kind of very similar to seeing them progress over the course of 6 years. And I would say probably accelerated. And she said, we're going to get to the cool stuff, but I need you to really build with this team. We need to see what we have, right? And we need to become business partners. They still see talent acquisition kind of administratively. And I said, okay. So, you know, I get here to LKQ, and I told Genevieve, I said, the 3 things that I really want to focus on is people, process, technology. And I think that that's going to help solve for some of the more fundamental things that we need to do. So day one was about really meeting with the team, understanding how they were positioned in the business. Talent acquisition at the time, we had the highest turnover in HR. So I wanted to try to understand.
Yeah, that's not where you're supposed to have the highest turnover.
No, it's not.
You never become a business partner if there's no consistency, right? Like that's number one, right? If every day you go to your, you know, we go to Chick-fil-A because we know that there's going to be consistency with my pleasure or just the little things, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I wanted to understand, one, who the talent acquisition team was and what was our North Star. Was there a North Star? What were our processes? What were our metrics that we had access to? And then the other side was I needed to understand the business, right? Like, was this inconsistency because of the business or was it because of us, right? Was it self-inflicted, which is kind of difficult to say. And then interacting with the leaders to understand what their vision for talent acquisition was. Did they even have a vision? What was TA to them, maybe in their previous lives or now? And so in the first 6 months, I took myself, Shauna, and we went all across the country. We talked to every single recruiter, and we had to make some tough decisions. And we really focused on building our team based off of character over competency. That was the number one thing, was I wanted people that love to win. More so, I wanted people that love the process of winning more than winning, right?
Yes.
Because, you know, I kind of came in very hard and fast, and I told the team I don't lose. I don't have a fallback plan, and I wanted people that had that same mentality. And so we were able to bring in a good core of people. We retained a good core of people, and we brought in a few others, and we then built the talent acquisition mission statement. From then, we needed a North Star. We needed the team to really buy into what success looked like for us being Shauna, myself, Genevieve, and based off of what I heard from the leaders, what success looked like. And so I think that was the number one installment there, because now we had a yellow brick road to success. And then we focused on the business. We said, hey, now we have the right people. Now this is going to be your role in our process, right? And talent acquisition. So, frontline leaders, this is what we need you to do. We'll deliver on this. If you deliver on this, then the result will be this, which is basically like our mission statement. And so we got them to buy in. And that's when we built our processes out. And we said, for the most part, because we have some different parts of the business, our process should be about the same. There should be some very small nuances, but if we follow this, then we think we can be successful. So that's the playbook, right? So we went out, we did our work, we built our culture, and we said, this is the playbook based off the players we have that we feel like that our offense, defense, and special teams can be highly successful. And so we put that in play, and we said, we know that we have some struggles with our technology, but we believe that if we do what we're asked to do in the first year and a half, that we will get the technology that will help streamline all of this. And so if we get really good at the fundamentals, the blocking and the tackling, we feel like then once we get that technology, it'll take it to the next level. And so we were able to do that. Those were the primary focuses. And then, we had some outside things, right? We had the staffing spin, like why staffing, but that blended right into process, right? If you have an internal recruiter, TABP, why are you spending money to go outside, right? Like use this person because they are a part of our team. They're going to sell it better than anybody else, right? And quite frankly, our TABPs and myself and Shauna, we're on the hook too, right? So we're not delivering, then you automatically have a say in, the feedback so we can get better, as well as like the candidate experience and the attraction, right? We needed to go from one of the biggest companies that no one's heard of to, hey, why not come work here, right? Like, why are we quiet about who we are, right? Let's be a little bit more proud, and it's not boasting, but it's like, hey, this is a great place to be where you can build your career. We promote from internal. Our CEO currently has been a lifer with us. He's been here 25 plus years.
Oh, wow.
You too, right? And we need to capture that and take that to market. And it's turned out to work pretty well so far.
So people, process, technology. And I'm really curious, not to put you on the spot, but what was the mission statement that you guys came up with?
I have it ready
after you're
for
listening
you.
for Yes. Seared into your brain.
Exactly. He's got it.
If I throw it out there, then I have to be ready for it. It's the LKQ talent acquisition team will provide best-in-class recruitment support by focusing on candidate experience, hiring leader support, and a robust recruiting experience. And under that, we have people, process, technology.
Beautiful. It all aligns. Yeah. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Did that help get buy-in from, because I think you've hit the nail on the head. And it's interesting too, because we haven't mentioned yet, you've also been on the other side of the desk. You worked at Aerotech, you've been in staffing. So like you understand the nuances of how this all works. Like you understood too that unfortunately a lot of organizations see talent acquisition and HR in general as just folks that push paper. Right. They're just administrative. They're the ones I'm going to go. They're separate. I'm going to go yell at them because my turnover's too high or whatever's going on. They never look in the mirror and go, well, maybe my turnover is high because of me. Right. Or the experience that employees are having in my organization. So how did you build that initial trust with operations, with leadership to go, hey, we're willing to look at ourselves. We've got work to do in our own house. But you got to work with us and we can make this entire, let's stop pointing fingers at each other and let's build something, right? Is that kind of
let's be a team.
Is
that how you went about it? Like, how'd you do it?
It was three major things that I identified, and Shauna, we laugh about it to this day because I asked her, she got to interview me. And one thing she said was, I need someone that's going to have my back, but also someone that's going to tell our story. And the first thing that we decided to do was to tell our story, was to really peel the onion back as to what being a talent acquisition business partner, specialist, coordinator, manager, what it really looks like. What is really the war on talent, right? It's not something that everybody can do. People would argue that, but I think that if you do it really good, that, it cuts down on a lot of things, right? Extra costs, it cuts down on, turnover, all those things. So we focused on telling our story. So we started with a monthly executive communication that went out to all the way from our CEO to our RVPs, and they can also funnel that down. And it's a high level overview about, kind of our rec number, where we were last year, or excuse me, it uses comparison. So where we were last month to this month, right?
Okay.
Have also a year by year comparison. And then we break it down by our different lines of business, right? And we show highlights, we show where our rec numbers are. We're extremely transparent. We also talk about people, process, technology in there. So each month, we're telling them on the people side, on the TA side, process, what were process improvements, the technology, where we are with that. And we wanted accountability. We truly believe in talent acquisition that you have to be accountable for what you do in order to get buy-in. The other two things that we did was we got out to the business. We told our BPs, get out there, let them see you, go shoulder to shoulder with them, right? And when you're there, spend time really understanding the operation, understand their pain points, understand what they do great, understand the market is extremely important, as well as the competition, right? And be open about that, right? Like, hey, I want to see what this company is doing and why we think they may be successful, right? Call on some of those people that worked there before and verify it, right? See if it's really true. And then lastly, one thing that I brought, and Shauna got around to it much better in our team now, is understanding the P&L, right? As an HR professional, if there's any recommendation I can give any HR professional, is truly understand the P&L, because that's
100%
really can be a true business partner. And now you're speaking the same language. You're not just speaking people, you're speaking the financials, you're speaking the EBITDA, you're speaking to, what your operations costs are. And I'll give a little story. When I was my first role at Republic Services, I was an area field recruiter, and I had South Texas. And I remember the controller and the area president, they loved me for whatever reason. I was, young, 28 years old.
Yeah, come on.
I was 28 years old in the region office, and I'm like having a good time, and I never wanted to leave that job. And, they just took me under their wing, and they would a couple times a month show me the P&L, and we would walk through it from a region perspective, and they would answer my questions and ask me, did I know what this meant? And it went all the way down to the local level. And why that was important was because that allowed me to understand where I should put my focus to, as far as what business units I should be focusing my recruitment efforts on. Just because this site has 3 openings, they may be, still killing it on their profitability, versus this one site that is missing that one person or that one driver that could be making a major impact on their business and their customers. So
yeah,
we
100%.
really spent time, teaching talking to our team about the P&L and how to ask those questions to their leaders. And so that could really help them with the sense of urgency that we needed around finding the right people and retaining those people. So I would say those 3 things were the primary things that we did. And then, we just built on that, right? We just continued to build on it to see where our gaps in our game were.
I think what's awesome about all of those 3 steps, a core of it is communication and transparency. For all 3, it's like a common thread. And when everybody understands the mission, they know what it means to be a champion, going back to your sports illustrations, which I love. I think that's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck when it comes to employees and getting the most out of them, because they understand what success is. So props.
I see the same thing happening within transparency, not just within your 4 walls, but outside of it.
Yeah.
Right. You first have to understand what's happening in the business, but too often we work with companies where they're living in such a bubble that they don't understand why they're missing their headcount goals, why they're missing their recruitment goals, why their turnover is high. And it is surprising when you say, well, if you just do a quick Indeed search for those roles in your zip code, look at what other companies are. I mean, that's the first step, right? Like, what are they offering that you aren't? And sometimes it is a massive gap in pay, right? Sure. Sometimes you can do something about that. Sometimes you can't.
Right.
Other times it's, oh, well, this company over here is doing, free lunch Fridays, or they're allowing them flexible scheduling, or like, look around, get out. Like you said, I love the idea of get outside your 4 walls, see what's happening in the community, see what's happening in other companies, especially within the organization too, right? Go visit those sites. Maybe they haven't had somebody from TA at corporate visit in 5 years.
Absolutely.
And that can make all the difference in the world that they got some attention.
Yeah. I think, our business leaders that are local, most of our TA BPs, they do sit in their regions, which is great. It's super empowering, right? Our business leaders typically know their markets like the back of their hand. Another thing we did, because we didn't have a lot of budget spend, was how could we market, I don't want to say free, but at a fair rate is maybe the best way to say. And one thing that from my university recruiting days that I got a great tip on that I've used throughout my career was building partnerships in the community. It's so many nonprofits, it's so many organizations that work with transitioning professionals, veterans, women's focused organizations, social economic or return to work. And that was one thing that we talked a lot about and our team is responsible for. I mean, our TA VPs do quarterly business reviews, and partnerships are a part of it because you can go to some of these partnerships and they have people that they're interacting with daily that are looking for opportunities and looking for something better that fits them. And if we're able to do mock interviews, if we're able to sit on panels, if we're able to, even promote our jobs to them, that creates a trust in the community that, hey, not only will LKQ, they're here, but they really want to be a part of this community and offer local jobs. And so that's been a huge lift for us locally as well as nationally as well. And so we kind of are working it like that so that our brand continues to expand.
Yeah, I was about to say that's a really great brand rep strategy is getting out there in the community, even if it is just more of a panel giving advice. It doesn't have to be necessarily so on the nose about come work for us. It could just be what your brand stands for. And that, again, builds brand trust. And people will think of you. So super smart to go about it in that way.
Thank you.
Yeah. What do you think, looking forward? We talked a little bit about AI. You said you're not using it in recruiting.
We want to know why.
Yeah. I'll call you on that a bit because why not? But what do you see, not just this year, the next coming years? I've got a teenager at home. I'm trying to figure out, where do I steer her? And I know that manufacturing, supply chain, all those companies, they're going to need human beings for a good long while. AI is not coming for those jobs in 6 months, right? Where do you see the strategy going, this year and beyond?
Yeah, that's a loaded question.
I know.
It's such a good one. I go a lot of different directions with that. I'll start here. I think, and I come from a family of educators, so I think it starts with, and you see it in college sports and high school sports now, this thing called NIL, right? But the reality of it is you have to start recruiting for jobs, middle school, high school. We'll be down at Skills USA in a couple weeks in Atlanta, Georgia.
Awesome.
Just at Skills Canada last week. And these are high schoolers, freshmen, sophomores, juniors. And you have to get out in front of them because they are your future, right? And I know it sounds so cliche and cheesy, but trying to understand how they're thinking, so many people, at least even in my generation, my grandmother and my parents pushed me to go to college because hey, you get a good job, you don't have to break your back to make a fair wage. But now we're also seeing a shift going back to these vocational trades, skilled trades, which these folks are making, they're naming their check, right? And so how can LKQ partner with these vocational students? How can we partner with the high school students? Quite frankly, how can we even attract individuals that maybe work in a desk job that really don't want to, that are good at working in distribution centers and want to be Lean Six Sigma certified and, even lean manufacturing and kind of better the supply chain and things of that sort. So we have really put a focus and an emphasis on that group of individuals, right? From high school to career transitioners, veterans that have kind of worked in the more manufacturing side, because there's a couple different parts of our business. We have the distribution side, which is going to be your warehouse, your forklifts and all that. So we want to make sure that we're efficient and safety is number one priority, even with the product getting to the customer. But then we also have the side that's more of our salvage business, which is going to be your more hands-on gritty. If you're in Minnesota, it's going to be cold out there, you're parts, and moving cars. But there is such a big group of individuals that just love cars, right? And how can you fit your niche here? Instead of putting cars together, do you like to pull them apart, right? And see,
she would love that.
How they operate.
She would absolutely love that.
So we've really focused a lot on that. Technology is a big one. We are a global company. So, I studied this in grad school, the theory of globalization and how technology has brought the world into basically no delays in business. And how can we partner with our European, colleagues, as well as our North American colleagues, and for us to exchange best practices, but also streamline our business to where, it's pretty consistent. Now, there's going to be differences, obviously, because of countries and things of that sort, but how can it look very similar so we can collect the right data in order to continue to be effective? So technology and globalization and supply chain and things like that is going to be huge. And I would say lastly, right, just being us at LKQ on the talent acquisition side, we're starting to catch up, right? Which is fun. It's great, right? But how can we start to install internal talent management programs and talent acquisition? How can we use talent acquisition to bring in the right talent, for talent managed to elevate that talent so that the business can continue to elevate. So those would be the 3 big priorities that we're looking at and that I see as so much opportunity, and not just the university level, apprenticeship programs,
Yes.
career transitioners. Like I mentioned, veterans, how can we bring veterans in that have transitioned from active duty into one of our programs that we're wrapping our arms around them with our ERG that can make sure that they're successful? Because I think it's, if you can keep an employee for about 2 years, then the probability of them staying 10 years is huge compared to someone that's in for about, 6 to 9 months. So you want to try to just wrap your arms around them and provide them with what they need over the course of those 2 years so that they can really start to wear that LKQ brand every day.
Speaking of keeping folks around, I'm curious, what do you think needs to change, or maybe some best practices on retaining, especially like frontline workers? How can we get them to stay past 6 months?
For like 6 weeks.
Or 6 weeks.
Man,
how can we do that better?
That's a tough one. I think if you ask 10 people, they're going to give you 10 different answers.
I want to know Gordon's version.
Yeah. All right. So for me, I think it truly, truly starts with the story that you tell in attraction. When you attract people, you understand what their why is and what they're motivated by, right? And that goes directly into culture. If you're seeking someone that's only money motivated, then hey, you know what? Like money is not going to solve all your problems, right? I know my parents used to tell me that, and I'm like, yeah, right, you're crazy. And
that's kind of true. Do you want to eat well or sleep well?
True, right? But I think that if you can be consistent in your attraction throughout the interview process, right? And the interview process builds on that. And you can speak to, your culture, it can impact what they're motivated by, and they can see themselves here and also understand what a career track for them looks like. I am totally against linear career tracks. My career, and I know we'll talk about that, but it is truly like this. It's all over the place. It's not a linear path. And I think that each person, whether you're a frontline employee or you're coming in as a VP, I think that you are owed by your leader to have a career conversation very upfront so that we can understand what it is that you're really seeking. So if you're unhappy, well, hey, if you wanted to become a supervisor at one point, what is it about this role that you don't like so much? Because this is how you can use it in your next role, right? And then I think onboarding is key. I think onboarding and follow-up. Onboarding, making sure people are prepared to go out on that floor or in that yard. Day one, it is not safe for someone to go out there and do a job that they've never done. I'm sorry, it's just not. And then what does our follow-up look like? So, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, and are we providing good, sound, constructive feedback? And are we willing to accept good, sound, constructive feedback?
It's 2 ways.
Right? Because, our frontline employees are the ones that are getting it done. I like to say they're signing my check, right? And I know Justin, our CEO, would be like, oh, but they really are. He has a big passion for the frontline employees as well. But I think those would be the keys to keeping people in the company over the course of 10 plus years. And then I think leaders, we have to do a good job of having a pulse of our team. Sometimes you got to shake things up, right? Sometimes you got to give someone a chance in a role that, maybe on paper it doesn't seem right?
Right.
But let's just see, because maybe
that's what they wanted to do.
That spirit, or maybe they have that curiosity, or, some people just like to change it up, and it reignites their fire. So I would say those things are the primary keys to retaining great talent.
Love that.
Yeah, that's great. That was fun.
Yeah.
We also have to ask, how do people get a hold of you, Gordon?
Yeah.
They want to hear more wisdom from GP.
Man,
everybody
calls me GP, so that is you call on. That's it.
Adam.
I knew it.
You just know.
I just know.
Vibe check.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, I'll say, the best way to find me is on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I try to be as active on LinkedIn as possible. Sometimes I drop some leadership nuggets. I'm obsessed with leadership. I'm obsessed with people, as far as, just trying to understand how I can better serve, whether my team or the community or LKQ. I mean, this job and all my jobs have just been, I tell my team, they keep me employed. I'm just so grateful for them, because they're the ones that make the sausage, I guess you would say. So I'm just here trying to make sure that everybody has a great experience and loves what they do. And if they don't, let's talk about it and see how we can make it better.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gordon.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you.